You can start.
Started. Haribo Padma Prabhu. Just waiting for everybody to join. Anyway, it looks like we've got a better situation now. We've got the wind behind us. So,
Yeah, I will.
okay, I'll see you later.
Close the curtain.
You can close them if you want. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so it's just gone at past. So we've got 2 so far. I roll Shankar Guru. So we'll just wait a few minutes and let give them 5 minutes for everybody to join. We don't lose so much then. And then after that we'll just start anyway, no matter who's here. I hope everybody's in good shape anyway. Seems like everybody's working from home now. Are you working from home, Padma? What about you, Shankar? Are you working from home? No, Maharaj, my lab is doing the oil, of course. So you're in the front line then. Okay, we'll get started anyway. There's nothing. So I'm going to read from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text number 55. Brahmabhuta prasanatma, Bhakti mam ave yanati, yavan yas chasmi tadvataha, ato mam tadvato gyadva vishate tatanantaram. Translation. I'll just go through the word for word. Bhaktya, by pure devotional service, mam, me, abhigyanati, one who can know, yavam, as much as, yaha, cha, asmi, as I am, Tatvata, in truth. Tadaha, thereafter, Mam, me, Tatvata, in truth. Yatva, knowing, Vishate, he enters. Tat Anantaram, thereafter. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his plenary portions cannot be understood by mental speculation nor by non-devotees. If anyone wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has to take to pure devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Otherwise, the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will always be hidden. As already stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.25, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya, he is not revealed to everyone. No one can understand God simply by erudite scholarship or mental speculation only. Only one who is actually engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service can understand what Krishna is. University degrees are not helpful. One who is fully conversant with the Krishna science becomes eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom of the Absolute, in the abode of Krishna. Becoming Brahman does not mean that one loses his identity. Devotional service is there, and as long as devotional service exists, there must be God, the devotee, and the process of devotional service. Such knowledge is never vanquished, even after liberation. Liberation involves getting free from the concept of material life. In spiritual life, the same distinction is there, the same individuality is there, but in pure Krishna consciousness. One should not mistakenly think that the word Vishate enters into me supports the monastery, that one becomes homogeneous with the impersonal Brahman. No, Vishate means that one can enter into the abode of the Supreme Lord in one's individuality to engage in the association and the service unto him. For instance, a green bird enters a green tree, not to become one with the tree, but to enjoy the fruit of the tree. Impersonalists generally give the example of a river flowing in the ocean and merging. This may be a source of happiness for the impersonalist, but the personalist keeps his personal individuality like an aquatic in the ocean. We find so many living entities within the ocean if we go deep. Surface acquaintance with the ocean is not sufficient. One must have a complete understanding, one must have complete knowledge of the aquatics living in the ocean depths. Because of his pure devotional service, a devotee can understand the transcendental qualities and the opulences of the Supreme Lord in truth. As it is stated in the 11th chapter, only by devotional service can one understand. The same is confirmed here. One can understand the Supreme Personality guided by devotional service and enter into his kingdom. After attainment of the Brahma Bhuta stage of freedom from material conceptions, devotional service begins by one's hearing about the Lord. When one hears about the Supreme Lord, automatically the Brahma Bhuta stage develops. And material contamination, greediness, and lust for sense enjoyment disappears. As lust and desires disappear from the heart of the devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord, and by such attachment he becomes free from material contamination. In that state of life, he can understand the Supreme Lord. This is a statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam also. After liberation, the process of bhakti or devotional or transcendental service continues. The Vedanta Sutra 4.1.12 confirms this. Aprayanat tatrapihi prishtam. This means that after liberation, the process of devotional service continues. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position. The constitutional position is already explained. Every living entity is part and parcel, fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his constitutional position is to serve. After liberation, this service is never stopped. Actual liberation is getting free from misconceptions of life. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namah. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Kastatya Deshitarini. So this is from the 18th chapter, and the 18th chapter is the conclusion of or an overview of the whole Bhagavad Gita again, in reflection, going back. And the first verses up to text 12, they deal with Karma Yoga. That's the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And then the next verses from 13 up to 40, I think it is, or up to 13. They deal with Karma Yoga. 13 up to about 18. They deal with Jnana Yoga, recapping on Jnana Yoga, and then next, so many verses up to 40 deal with how it's applied. How the first question in the 18th chapter, where Arjuna asks, what is the difference between sannyas and tyag? And he explains sannyas means giving up the results of all activities based on material desire. And the impersonalists interpret that means giving up all activity because we're in the material world and we're full of desire. But the tyag means that giving up the results of all activity. So it means we perform the activity, we give up the results. So there seems to be a difference. What Krishna says, acts of charity, penance, and austerity, which are meant to make spiritual advancement, whether we're devotees or whether we're impersonalists, they should be performed. These sacrifices are there because they purify even the great souls. So that was Krishna's conclusion. And so then he started to explain, the philosophy behind that in Jnana Yoga, that they're both the same, sannyas and tyag. Mayavadi sannyasis, they try to give up everything, but they can't maintain it and they fall down. But real sannyas means nothing belongs to us anyway, we can't renounce anything, so we use it in Krishna's service. So it's tyag. So they're both the same. And then we started talking about the how to work in this world in the 18th chapter through the process of our particular varnashram situation, our occupation, and our spiritual situation, varna and ashram. And it says if we perform our particular work according to our position in the varnashram system, and we surrender the results to the Supreme Lord, then we can attain the Supreme. And then the next few verses explain that technically how that practically works. And it's more or less speaking the philosophy of, it's not really including Krishna in the program. But Prabhupada always includes Krishna in the purport. it's explaining the situation from a gyan, and so then now it started. This is the first verse which starts to explain Bhakti. The previous verse was explaining if we perform our karma properly for the service of the Lord, we come to real knowledge, and then we use that to renounce ourselves from this world. Eventually we'll come to the position of being liberated, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Asochitena Kankshati, Samak Sarvishu Bhuta Shuna, Bhakti Lavate Param. So then it says that, then this is the next verse, that that's not that's a type of liberation, that's impersonal liberation. But real liberation is called not just mukti, but vimukti. Vimukti means special liberation, or devotional service. And so all the way through the Bhagavad Gita, it's been explaining all these processes of jnana and karma. And now it's explaining the simple process of serving Krishna. One can understand me as I am, as a Supreme Personality of God, only by devotional service. So they all culminate in devotional service. And so this is a special benediction that our founder Acharya gave us, Prabhupada. Even though we're not qualified, even though we're not considered even Shudras by our activities previous to devotional service, still he's saying just by this performance which he's given us, then immediately we can rise up to the platform of liberation by our activities, by engaging in full devotional service. And that's to be situated in our constitutional position if the consciousness is also fully purified. So this is what this verse is explaining. So what has that got to do with unlocking Bhakti? Well, it started to unlock Bhakti. The process is that we're very fortunate, extremely fortunate. And I was explaining yesterday how Krishna is trying to make everybody fortunate. Why? Because Brahmanda Brahmate Bhagavanji Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhakti Lata Bij. The living entity has been wandering from the higher planets to the lower planets, from this species to that species, for millions and millions of births. And then, by the grace of Supreme Personality of God, one gets a seed of Bhakti. And he gets that through the devotee. Somehow or other, we get the good fortune of the Supreme Lord in that way. And so this is our position. We were explaining yesterday how we can all preach. Now, we're obligated. We've become so. Krishna's obligated us now to get give the same mercy that we've received. So where does Bhakti come from? I just gave the answer that it comes from the devotee. In the Madhurya Kadambini, it explains this point very nicely, that Raso Vai Saha. This is Lord Krishna. Raso means mellow or taste. Is our relationship. So Raso Vai Saha. So that Krishna is the reservoir of all relationships. And he's can relate with every living entity in a different way, unlimited living entities. And so this is his desire to relate with every living entity in devotional service, according to their particular desire. He doesn't desire, he fulfills the desire of his devotee. And we all have a particular nature which Krishna wants to help us to reciprocate with him in that nature. And he will reciprocate in kind. But he says that there's a bit of conjecture about, Krishna's described as being equal to everybody. So some get Bhakti and some don't. So it doesn't seem if he's equal. So then he starts to explain that actually, just like Krishna is completely independent, he's called Swarat, so his internal potency, or Bhakti Devi, is also completely independent. So it seems that, Bhakti, or it's explained actually that Bhakti can bestow herself in anywhere, at any situation. But then it explains that, so why doesn't Bhakti just all of a sudden manifest in one minute living entity? He says sorry, I missed a part out. So Bhakti is it's unmotivated. It's not got any material cause. So it must be a spiritual cause. So it says that Bhakti won't manifest anywhere. She could if she wanted, unless there's actually a situation, and it's the devotee who creates that situation. Because the devotee in making an endeavour to serve the Supreme Lord, this is a devotional service, and to the degree that he has devotional service or Bhakti Devi in his heart, then he can give devotional service to others. But ultimately, we have to remember that Krishna benedicts him with the ability to do that, but still he fulfills the desire of his devotee. So Bhakti is coming from us. If we have some devotion to the Lord, if we have once that devotion that we're surrendering our lives to some degree to the Supreme Lord. Well, we could be doing so many things, but we're not. We're following his instructions. So this is Bhakti. And then, because we have that, we can also give Bhakti to others. So everybody's a different propensity. Look at Prabhupada, he had so much Bhakti. So many thousands of devotees all over the world just by his Bhakti. I just remember when I read Prabhupada's book, Science of Self-Realization. And when after reading through, a certain amount of pages, I thought, who wrote this? This is the most amazing thing I've ever read in my life. And I remember saying to myself, whoever's wrote this, he's really my best friend. Because I understood that this was actually the goal of life, to surrender to this process. And I'm sure a lot of other devotees got the same, at some point in their, progress, got that same conclusion. And then about a year later, maybe less than a year, I visited the temple in Froom Court. It was called Chaitanya College. And I didn't know Prabhupada left the movement at that time. I was still in self-isolation, as they call it, but a different kind. Everybody's in self-isolation. They're isolating themselves from Krishna. And then they put a video on, and it showed you, and then it explained on this video that Prabhupada had left this world. And it was called Your Ever Well-Wisher. Wow, what a title. That just explains the way I was feeling. I was feeling that in a different way. This is my best friend. So that's the devotee. He's actually, Para Dukkha Dukhi, is the best friend of everybody. Para means supreme, Dukhi, he gives relief to the Dukhi, to the people who are suffering. So there's a little bit of, a little bit of a background about the obligation we're what's the word, which is bestowed upon us to give Bhakti to others. Nobody can receive Bhakti just by reading the books. Of course, they can to some degree if they read Prabhupada's books. But still, it takes the association of another devotee to really give that person the proper understanding. So, just let me see where we are. Yes, so, the whole process, how do we get the adhikar? What's adhikar? Qualification. How do we get the qualification to receive bhakti? Anybody got any answers? You can write it on the notebook if you want. It's a bit awkward, isn't it? Usually when I go on Zoom and everybody can answer immediately, but this is a little different. It's not meant for interaction, it's meant for one way. But anyway, what is it? What is a qualification that so actually one point I've missed is that bhakti does come from bhakti. Because the devotee's got bhakti, he can give bhakti. We can't give something that we don't have. So it is coming from Bhakti Devi ultimately. And Bhakti Devi is Srimati Radharani. This is why Lord Chaitanya appeared in the mood of Srimati Radharani to give this highest process of devotional service. But still, why doesn't Lord Chaitanya just, sprinkle it on everybody? He does obviously by his chanting, but not everybody take advantage. I remember in the early days, Prabhupada was one part, I think it was in the series of books by Sasvarup Maharaj. I think there's about 5 books, Prabhupada Lilamrita. And there's one part where he's waiting to go in the office, and he's outside the office with his secretary. And he says, "Can I have a drink of water?" And the secretary, says, "Yeah, the dispenser's there," and points to the dispenser. And Prabhupada looks at the dispenser and then looked at her and didn't move. And then she realised, so she got up, got a cup and filled it with water and gave it to Prabhupada. So he engaged in some service. So what is the qualification? We do some service. We get somebody to do some service. And it doesn't mean necessarily physical service. Even if we can just get somebody to appreciate a devotee, then that's service. We get them to appreciate the books, appreciate the process. If there's some appreciation in that person for Krishna, and Krishna means his representative and all his paraphernalia. So if we can get a person to appreciate something about Krishna consciousness, whatever it may be, then we start his devotional service. It's such a wonderful process. And so it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam that Shush Shadadana Shah Vasudeva Ktavashi Sannahat Mahat Sevya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevanat. He says, by serving those devotees who are completely free from vice, great service is done, and by such service one gets an affinity for hearing about Supreme Personality of Godhead. So by that little bit of appreciation and service, we may not be on that platform of completely free from vice, but because we're represented in the process and we're representing Prabhupada and his books, then we're connecting them to the devotee who's completely free from all vice. And then because, Prabhupada gives the example of love me, love my dog. If a person's got a dog and we pat the dog on the head and appreciate it, the person becomes happy. So when we, appreciate Krishna's devotee, then Krishna becomes happy. And so then hearing, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, this is a process. We just have to hear, that's all. It's a very simple process. But who wants to really hear? Nobody wants to hear. I don't have time. No time. Prabhupada wrote one article in the Bhakti magazine, and then he wrote a few paragraphs on that. But now they've got time. This is what we mentioned yesterday. Now we have time to actually do things through the internet. This is one way. But hearing is the most important process. If we can just hear on a regular basis, I've got it into a habit now, something I haven't done, and I should have done years ago, but it's just like due to laziness, is that I got one of these machines, you get them from the Manor or from Manchester Temple, these little red machines look like a mouth organ. And it's called Prabhupada's lectures and everything on it that Prabhupada ever did. And all you have to do is switch it, make sure it's charged, and you can charge it while it's working. Switch it on, and then type in and 4 numbers, and whatever number that coincides with one of his lectures or one of his morning walks, then you just can listen to Prabhupada. Very nice, very loud as well. Just switch that on while you're taking a shower, and switch it on while you're getting dressed, switch it on when you're doing something, and you can just listen. And it's by that process that, this actual process of devotional service becomes real, and we become enlivened and convinced. That's the, Satyam Prasangam Mama Viri Samvido. By discussion of the topics of the Lord in the association of devotees, then one actually becomes advanced on the process of devotional service, and eventually real devotional service begins. So I'm talking about the process because we're trying to attract people. These many people who are in distress more than what they used to be. Devotees are not in distress. It's Krishna's mercy. Not a blade of grass moves without the Supreme. Whatever Krishna wants, we just carry on with our devotional service. Krishna protects. He protects protects the soul. But they're in distress because they're in ignorance. And so, we have to start their devotional service somehow, and then, try to nurture it in an ongoing way. Or if we're not capable of nurturing it, we can at least start it, then others can nurture it. So, we saw, I was at an initiation ceremony about 2 months ago. An initiation is said to be the beginning of devotional service. So we have to understand what initiation is. It means initiating a process. So actually, Bhakti Padakshika Guru is the first Guru, the one who initiates the process for that person. Preaches to him, gives him a book, engages him in some way, in some favourable thoughts or service about the Supreme Lord. This is Bhakti Padakshika. So initiation begins, it's really begun by the Supreme Lord when he bestows his mercy, when he gives a seed of bhakti to that individual through his devotee. And then the next is that the devotee starts hearing. We just start about a little bit of service, start hearing. This is shiksha. So, and that ongoing hearing is cultivating that person's devotional kripa and already starting to destroy material attachments at that point. And then eventually, when the material attachments become lessened, there'll be a desire for wanting to become serious about the process. And we'll start to make vows that I'm going to follow this process for the rest of his lifetime. And that's when formal initiation takes place with the Diksha Guru. So this is what initiation is. We're trying to initiate everybody into the process. We can be Guru. Prabhupada said, let everybody should become Guru. If you know, what's the qualification of Guru? To know the science of Krishna. We just read in this verse, there's Krishna, there's the devotee, and there's the devotional service. That's the science of Krishna. And we all know it to some greater or lesser degree, in technical terms. When Prabhupada was initiating once in America, it was in the mad days of the hippies. As he was initiating, some more hippies came along. He said, can we take initiation? Prabhupada looked at them and he looked at the temple president. And the Temple President Prabhupada, they've only been once or twice before, they don't know anything. And then Prabhupada looked at them again and said, who is Krishna? And they said, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says, who are you? He says, we are his servants. He said, initiate them. So, we can give that. We can give. The science of Krishna. Actually, knowing the science of Krishna is theoretically understanding that, and then understanding it with the heart. It sinks into the heart that I am a servant of Krishna. And then by hearing, this strong attachment to the material energy will disappear. Eventually, even sex life won't be bothering. It'll just sort of. It says that he mentioned this in purport to the next verse in the Bhagavatam. That many stalwarts have fallen to the attraction of Maya. Horrible caution food. Many stalwarts have fallen victim to the attractions of Maya. But if we take this process of hearing properly, then all abhadrani, all the unwanted things within the heart, we don't notice, or it tends away. And then, we'll be actually peaceful. Peaceful means no sex desire, no desire for anything in this material world. And how does this happen? Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu, nityam bhagavata seva. Rendering service to the devotees and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. And all the troublesome things are actually cleansed away by regular hearing. Then tadara jastama bhava kama loba reaschaya cheta etir navidin stita sakre prasiddhi. Then we develop the mode of goodness. The lower modes disappear. Loba, anchoring and lamenting. Tadara jastama bhava, loba as chete etir. Kama, strong desire for sense gratification. Chete etir naviyam, heart is purified. Stita, we become fixed in devotional service. Then fixed in devotional service means the next stage is, what's the next stage? It's Evam Prasanna Manaso, Bhagavat Bhakti, or Yoga, Bhagavat Tattva, Vigyanam, Mukta Sangha Sujayate. Evam Prasanna Manaso, the mind becomes completely enlivened just by serving Krishna. When we focus on Krishna consciousness, we just become so enlivened by the process. There's nothing in the way anymore. And then we're actually on the Brahminical stage. We transcend the Brahminical stage, which is the mode of goodness, which the last verse was talking about. And we actually come to the Vaishnava stage of pure devotional service. And we're just enlivened. All the senses become enlivened. And vidyate hridaya grantis, this hard knot in the heart. Hridaya granti. Granti means not, hridaya heart. Vidyate is pierced. Vidyate hridaya grantis chindanti sarvasamshaya, the knot is cut. Chindanti sarvasamshaya. Kiya isyatis sadhukarmani Krishna evatmanishvare. Krishna means to see. Evatmanishvare, we see the self as master. We see the master Krishna, and we see ourselves as servants of the master. And we actually become master of the senses. So this is the process. And the next verse explains how many people have attained perfection by this. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't, and there's no reason why many others shouldn't. We should feel so much compassionate for them. They're just suffering so much, they have no knowledge. Let's give them some knowledge. break through this false ego. False ego is the thing which is holding us back. We're Krishna's servant, he can empower us. Let's give him a chance. Let's do whatever we can. We just give everybody, we don't know what's happening. We don't know Krishna's plan. If we give somebody a little bit of Krishna consciousness, even get them to smile, then, we don't know how that person's going to progress. We see from the mundane platform, therefore we always see, or we tend to see, we don't see anything really happening. It's a transcendental process. And, Prabhupada was saying, yes, nobody knew that I would come to the West. Nobody knew I would take shelter of Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. And so we can apply that process that, the world's our oyster. And we're free to give Krishna consciousness. Nobody can do that. Who can give Krishna consciousness? We're so benedicted. Bhagavad Gita says that one who does that, what's that verse? I can't remember the Sanskrit. It says that there's no one more dear to me than he. So this is the process, becoming very dear to Krishna. I was just I just was looking on the news at the advancement of coronavirus or what's happening. I was reading one or two things just to get some information. But one news page I went on, it wasn't an English one, I think it was an Indian one or something like that, Middle East, but they were actually reflecting on Italy, showing Italy, but they weren't going to the hospitals or giving what's been the latest total. They went to, it was a seaside, and they showed this boat in the harbour, and there were dolphins, swimming in the ocean at the side of the boat. He says this is a result of, everybody in Italy now, there's no transport, there's no boats going out to sea. Everything's stopped for the last few weeks. He says the result is these dolphins, which have not been seen for a long, long time, are now coming in from the sea, and now they're coming into shore and mixing with the, so that people can see the dolphins even from the shore side. And then he went to Egypt, where everything's locked down, and it showed you the runway of the airport, the NASA airport, and there was two I don't know whether they were ducks. Two ducks were walking across the runway, and all the half a dozen chicks were following them. So Prabhupada said this material nature, it's so powerful. He said even, they use the atomic bomb, they think they'll destroy this world. He said they can't destroy it. Krishna's energy is too powerful. This is material nature, is also Krishna's energy. And I was just thinking that applies here, that only within a few weeks, as this mad civilization stopped to some degree, and almost completely in Italy, that now the natural things are starting to come back after a few weeks. I was thinking the other day that, after 100 years of, if you close this civilization after maybe 50 years, I don't know, everything will become overgrown, everything will crumble, the skyscrapers will fall down, they'll become inundated with ivy and things which break down the structure. It'll become overgrown, and everything will be back to what it was. So very quickly we can make changes to this civilization by giving them knowledge. And it showed you one scene in another part of Italy on the one of the canals. He said these canals are usually, I think it was in Venice, they're usually full of boats carrying tourists to see the sights. And usually what you get, I don't know what kind of birds they get, but you might get an odd duck or so and a few magpies or some inauspicious birds. He said, but there were swans gliding down the river, that even the swans had come to actually rehabilitate. So nature's just waiting to overtake all this situation. And we can just understand what it was like in previous ages. You know, none of this petrol, none of this, all this fuel, which is, you know, nuclear fuel waste, which is just destroying the ecosystem. There was not, so everything, you know, another thing, so in the middle of one city, there was, I think it was in, I forget where it was, maybe Holland, there was badgers laid on the lawn. How often do you see a badger? I've never seen one, I don't think. But they were just like frolicking on the lawn of this place. So this was a newscaster. Even they're actually starting to see the benefits of, you know, withdrawing from this kind of living, this type of industrial civilization. Okay. There was one question yesterday by Shankar. I just thought I'd add a little bit to it. Shankar, how to become not too despondent or fearful about the situation. And I was talking about we preach. I'd just like to emphasize the process that Lord Chaitanya gave us. He was asked by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, which is the most important process of devotional service. And Lord Chaitanya immediately said, chanting the holy name. And if we chant the holy name with attention, then we'll be amazed how it changes our whole perception, the whole way we actually see and feel about things. Just by chanting with attention and with real concentration, it just changes our whole psychological arrangement. The things that we were fearful, they're not fearful anymore. I mean, just for instance, this is just my realization. You know, if I hadn't taken a devotional service, I wouldn't be wearing these things. You know, I was a very shy person. I had to actually be like everybody else, you know, like a sheep. And to think about, you know, shaving all my hair off, wearing this tea-like, and wearing robes, it would have been, you know, I would have been sweating with fear. But, you know, it's just an everyday occurrence now. Why? Because I'm in a different consciousness. And if I just stopped chanting the holy name, I'd put on a pair of Levi's, a checkered shirt, a pair of cowboy boots. Anyway, you know what I mean. I put a leather jacket. I didn't used to wear a leather jacket, but I put the old gear on, and the consciousness would be changed again. I wouldn't forget Krishna consciousness. But I'm just making the point how we are what we hear, and if we hear the Maha Mantra, then Krishna, what we're praying for, to be engaged in service and to be protected. And you know, the protection comes not necessarily physically, but that, you know, our consciousness becomes protected. We get raised to a spiritual consciousness, and that consciousness is protected and nurtured. So that's all we have to do. If there's any fear or any trepidation about anything, when in doubt, just get the bead bag out. Just start chanting and start hearing. And after a few rounds, you'll feel completely different. That's why Prabhupada said, you know, just chant at least 16 rounds. So, what I do when I'm going out, when I'm doing books, I have a little card with a mantra on it. And when people even refuse to take the book, I'll say, just a minute, and you come back. I'll say, you This is a very special mantra. I say different things to different people. But, you know, I've been speaking to them, so I know what they're after in life. So if you chant this, it'll fulfill all your desires. So can you chant it after me? And I go through the mantra with them. So, you know, we can get everybody to chant Hare Krishna. Anyway, we can stop there. I've done enough talking. But, you know, we have so much to give. This process that Bhagavad Gita is talking about, it's talking about so many processes. And Prabhupada was asked by one devotee, one of the audience, he just finished his lecture, he said, this is the direct process. You were saying about the direct process to approach God. He says, what about Christopher Columbus? There wasn't only one direction. If he'd have carried on going west, he'd eventually come to India. So there's more than one way. And it seemed to have, you know, he seemed to have beaten Prabhupada at that. And Prabhupada said, yes, you can go the long way if you want. You may never even get there. It's a long way to go west. He said, let's go the direct way. So that's why it says, only by devotional service can I be understood as I am. Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, any feedback or questions? It's 20 past. It's true, I felt by chanting attentively. Yeah. Very good. See, this is where it says this process is called self-realization. So, you know, personally, we realize it. That's one meaning that Prabhupada gave for that. He says, we, not necessarily the soul self, but we appreciate the process. This is explained in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Same chapter, it says it's Rajaguram Pavisam Idam Prakshabagamam Dharmyam. Pratshak means direct. And that's what Prabhupada was on with his devotees. They were all asking questions. And he was with his leading men anyway, actually. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. No, it was a class. And he said, so, at the end of the class, he said, how do we know we're making progress in devotional service? Does anybody have any answers? Oh, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Padma. He said that, and eventually one of his, eventually he said, when nobody was, they were giving so many answers, he says, we feel it, we feel Krishna. So that might seem like it's a Hajja thing. What does it mean like we feel Krishna? We feel Krishna working in our lives. That's a real test. All the other tests, you know, philosophical, intellectual, they do help. But when we actually feel the presence of Krishna working in our lives, we feel Krishna. That's, you know, because Krishna and his service are non-different. Krishna and his name is non-different. We may not see directly the form of the Lord, which eventually we will do, but we see him in different ways. And we're just constantly seeing Krishna in every situation. And therefore, that's full Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said, we don't see anything but Krishna. Every situation is Krishna. It's related. And that can be done by practice. We chant good rounds. The consciousness becomes surcharged with Krishna consciousness. And we just see how Krishna's working in every situation. So we can learn to see how Krishna is working in this lockdown situation. It'll be a very, very advantageous time for us, because we can't be so much out there. We're more within ourselves. We're more with our family. We can't be what the world diverted by so many things. Okay, thank you, everybody. So, unless there's any more comments or questions, there'll be tomorrow is Sunday, so there'll be a Sunday class. And tomorrow morning there's Bhakti Shastri for those who are on the Bhakti Shastri course. So thank you very much, and have a good night. And hopefully you can associate until later. Thank you. Hare Krishna.